Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Tracy Lamourie. Tracy is a high-profile international award-winning publicist, is the founder and managing director of Lamourie Media, Inc., a Universal Women's Network 2020 Woman of Inspiration winner for the Women in Media Award and the author of the upcoming book, Get Repped, Build Your Brand with Effective Public and Media Relations. She is also a well-known longtime advocate on a myriad of important worldwide issues and an award-winning international publicist working across industries from major entertainment projects to small businesses. Tracy is passionate about amplifying important messages and being a voice for those who most need one. She is recognized by media around the world for her 20-year campaign that ultimately helped free an innocent man from death row. One of Tracy's continued goals is helping her clients get major media attention and especially bring attention for her local community work. She is the winner of her first place Platinum Award Hamilton Spectator Reader's Choice for PR 2018, Diamond 2019. She has been frequently quoted in international media on both human rights issues as well as public relations thought leader. A frequent guest on TV, radio, and a high-profile podcast around the world on topics of leadership, empowerment, and entrepreneurship, as well as all aspects of media and public relations. She is a 2020 RBC Woman of Influence nominee and also recently nominated for an internationally prestigious 2020 Talberg Ellison Global Leadership Prize. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Tracy. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Fantastic. So let's get started. So tell me your origin story, Tracy. What are the key things from your childhood to adulthood that led you to where you are at currently?
I would say the one key thing that literally brought me from being and unexpectedly a journey that I never expected to be taking, that brought me from being, a telemarketer in my 20s to an international award-winning publicist with that big bio that you read now, is that somewhere along the line in my 20s, my husband and I, when we were more activists and advocates than business people, we ended up learning about an innocent man who was on death row, who was not didn't have a team, an advocacy team. We were not publicists. We were just activists. We ended up, I can't explain to this day what drew us to that advocacy and that story, but we ended up, connecting with that person, Jimmy Dennis, while he was on death row in Pennsylvania. Just anyway, getting reams of documentation, understanding that he actually was factually innocent, working for the next 15 to 20 years, I guess 20 years that we were involved, without any pay, literally as just a pro bono campaign to let the world know about this person that was innocent on death row. He was ultimately released and freed in 2017. The world agrees with us. There was a precedent-setting decision that, everybody knows now that it was a mistake, an error, and justice, and that they're fixing it in Philadelphia now as much as they can. But my part of the story and how that becomes a business story is I was doing all that stuff. I learned how to write a press release. In the non-9 to 5 part of my day. My 9 to 5 was getting paid, for entry level marketing and sales or whatever I was doing, things I wasn't particularly passionate about, just for, jobs. And then other part of my life. Like we all have another part of our life. Most people don't have a dramatic story like that, but whether it's a hobby or something that you, or you know, like a side, a lot of, we don't look at the skills and the passions and the things that we may have developed not work that we may be able to monetize. And I literally had a light bulb moment around 2012, which is when I started being freelancing, and then went into it 5 years where my husband and I started Lamourie PR as a general partnership. And then during COVID, we upped our game and incorporated, and you know, now we're in Inc. But basically, we went from a journey from where we were just, you know, activists trying to get a message out about one particular person, and then that we were hugely successful at that, to the point where we ended up with no legal or media experience beyond our little local radio show on CNN, on MSNBC, on Court TV, on, you know, being quoted in Der Spiegel and People magazine and all that stuff on our activist journey. And that's why when it suddenly hit me somewhere in 2012, hold on, wait a minute. I've been, what do they call that? A publicist. I realized that I pretty much have been doing the role of a publicist, and then that's something I could get paid for. And from literally that day, I was like, yeah, okay, so no more of this telemarketing. And I switched to literally like almost on a dime, because I was working from home doing different projects. I discovered, you know, Elance and freelancing, and found different avenues online where I could, you know, get that first job and then do really well at that first job and then get that second job. And, you know, then I took it off, stopped paying attention to any of those, started getting most of my projects off of LinkedIn. And now for the last 4 or 5 years, literally 80 to 90% of my work for real is referrals and repeat customers. And it's very rare that I go in looking for anything. I've never advertised in my life. I do go in and look at LinkedIn sometimes because really interesting people will connect with me, and I'm usually too busy to really pay attention. Then once in a while, I'm like, geez, let me go look and see who's connected with me. And I look through, and there's amazing people with like really interesting projects. Just I'll message them and say, hey, that's something I'd like to work on. And ultimately, a lot of times it works out because, you know, I have a pretty good resume. So if you're looking for PR, you know, I'm in the running.
So on that, and that's fantastic. You touched on a few things that I had put down here that I wanted to talk about. But part of the fact of the origin story that I'd like to know is, tell me something about you from your childhood up to you getting to that point. What intrigued you to, or what things have happened in your life that made you be somebody that would be even interested in going the direction and focus that you're in?
Well, growing up, as I always wanted to be a writer, and funnily enough, I used to also, I guess at some point I remember wanting to be I wanted to be a newscaster or a journalist, which is funny because now I give the news to reporters for them to give it to the world. But I remember that because I remember doing this with, like, this is just a random magazine that I just picked up, but I remember doing this with the Ottawa Citizen when I was like little, like 6 or 7, reading it like this. You're the camera, pretend there's a camera in front of me. Now there really is, but I would pretend there was a camera in front of me, and I'd be like, Berlin Packaging acquires a consolidated. I would see how much I could, you know, like look at it without looking at it, you know, like without reading, how much I could read. So I guess I wanted to be a journalist. I guess I wanted to, you know, be a reporter, and I've kind of forgot that. Then I wanted to be a writer, more fiction and that stuff. So somehow those childhood dreams have like got into my day job. So that's pretty good.
That's awesome.
And also, I loved the Beatles growing up. It was great, even though it was the 80s. You know, I was a crazy Beatles fan, and so I laughed. Someone meant to create a job where I work on the stuff I love. I loved the Beatles for 3 years. I was hired as the London Beatles Festival in, you know, Ontario. I like, you know, I was a medical cannabis patient, so I had an inside seat on like the whole emerging cannabis industry, and I still work with a whole bunch of consultants. And you know, it's so funny. I read a book now that I like, you know, or not even read a book. If I see a book that looks interesting, I don't just go and buy it on Amazon. First, I find out who the writer is. I contact the writer, and I'm like, I'm just about to buy your book. I see you just published it. So I think I am your audience, and I think it needs more media attention. Do you want to talk about it? So it's almost like if I like something now, I assume I should be working on it. And sometimes it works.
So, Tracy, one of the things that intrigues me, and I'm sure the listeners would love to know more, you did touch on it a bit, but I'd like more details about it. Your 20-year campaign that ultimately freed, I believe you said his name was Jimmy Dennis. What are the stages of how, so you said you learned how to write, you learned how to do different things, but what did you ultimately do to raise awareness or, approach people in politics or whatever that actually helped this man be set free? Like, what were the stages?
So at the time when we had, some called us to write to him, he had, a couple of friends, in Alaska that were writing to him, maybe if he needed, if he needed to get his message to his mother or something like that, they would help out. But basically what we did is, aside from the media thing, which that was the second thing, but first of all, we became a support team for him, and a way that he could communicate with his family and his lawyers and all that stuff. So we filled that role with, whether by letters where he could send us, please do this, please contact that person, because he had a 15-minute window every once a week where you could make a phone call. So if he would call us, that would be more effective than calling a family member, because he could tell us, tell this person that, tell this person that, tell the lawyers this, do that. So basically he was directing like a project manager, from in there, a team that was myself, my husband, and then ultimately a few other people that became involved when they saw media. So I wrote that first press release. We sent it out across America. It was very hard in those days to get any play about a wrongful conviction when the person was still in prison. It was before the days of all the podcasts, wrongful conviction podcasts that we have now. So they would talk about it after, but not before. But we were really effective in, so we sent it out internationally, and we sent it to everybody from Amnesty internationally to newspapers internationally. And, ultimately we got more people like us involved, not lawyers, not doctors, not, not lawyers, just people like us. And then 2 years into that, enough noise had been made about this case of actual factual innocence. A law firm that was pretty much like unicorns, which does not happen in real life the way it does in movies. A law firm out of Washington that was looking for a case to do pro bono, they were looking for a case of actual factual innocence, heard about Jimmy in Pennsylvania. And that wouldn't have happened, if he hadn't been effective in reaching out to people, and if we hadn't then been effective in getting media attention and galvanizing people and getting people talking about it and posting about it and all that. So when this law firm started, looking around for a case that they could actually get behind in terms of factual innocence, they heard about Jimmy Dennis. And then they got involved, and started taking care of the legal side, while we were continuing for the whole 20 years to be his daily support team, to reach out to things, to get information as he needed it, to, just whatever he couldn't do from that cell. And so we were, and both in the early, an emotional support and then a media support in terms of messaging that he needed. So yeah, so we became a conduit for him to be able to speak to the world, and then also, to do actual things that would help move things along for him, like in terms of contacting people or building awareness.
So was he in jail for 20 years?
Since 25 years. When we met him,
25 years.
he was the murder that he was convicted for, that he never knew the person, didn't fit the description, all that stuff, happened at the end of 1991. By the time the trial had gone, to pass, and was sent to death row, it was October 1992. 6 years later, so we met him by internet in May, and then we went and visited him in 2003. But we met him by internet in May or June of 1998. That's when we started, advocating for him, and then started an organization that we called the Canadian Coalition Against the Death Penalty, that grew out of that and ended up having a whole media life of its own. And that's the organization that we got on CNN and MSNBC and Court TV,
okay.
all that stuff. Not to talk just about the innocent prisoner. They would never do that. We would always try to bring it back to him. But we were talking about the death penalty in general, and, because of what we had uncovered in terms of from that innocence case. And then we started being like, just wow, other people started to come to us with their stories, and so we ended up being just shocked with what was down there. So we ended up doing this previous to my PR life. This is all as a young activist, was still talking about 1998 or something. So to answer the original question, yes, he went to death row in 92. He was ultimately released in 2017. So he was literally there for 25 years. And our part of that journey came from June 98, when we connected with him by mail and by letter and built him a website and started writing press releases, until 2002. We were able to actually go and visit him on death row. My only experience going and, visiting the death camps. And then, ultimately after that, there was, and then in terms of my business, my personal journey, the business side of it, around 2012 is when I had that light bulb moment. So he still had another 5 years in prison. The wheels were moving. We were finally getting, for a while we had no hope. And then for a while, then we were getting hope again, because things were starting to look good in the court, but it's still a long, slow, so while he was still on death row, and while we were anticipating that now things are going our way and he probably will ultimately get out, didn't expect it to be another 5 years, but somewhere in there is when I suddenly realized, wait a minute, all this press release stuff, all this media messaging, that's something people pay for. And not to, for the activists of that cause, I would never take money for that, but to take those skills that I had built in that cause and then offer to, musicians, small business people, whoever, because I suddenly realized, well, I'm really good at this thing that most people don't know how to do, which is getting their message out to media. And even with a, controversial, I basically started a PR career in a way you wouldn't start. If you were planning to build a career where you're, doing other people's messaging, you wouldn't start being an activist with a controversial issue.
Yeah.
Now, when you look back, he was an innocent man, so that part wasn't controversial, but we got into the whole death penalty thing and he was still there. So no one was necessarily taking that as a fact until it happened that everyone agreed. Right. So yeah, you wouldn't necessarily take that path. You would be like in the background. But so I guess I've done PR differently the whole way. People have looked at me and they say, well, you clearly know what you're doing. Even at the beginning, that transition, I thought, is that going to be, is that going to be difficult to get clients when they Google me? And instead, now they Google me and you have 10 years of award-winning PR. But back then when you Googled me, it was this death penalty girl. This girl had been all over the, but I had to translate that and say, no, but you see what I did there. You see what I did there. Like I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a politician. I'm not a, and yet I was on CNN, MSNBC. So how do you do that? How do you translate that? And that was, and even then someone pointed out that was in the pre-Twitter days. So we had the internet and email, but so that has changed, PR and messaging and reaching out to media. Obviously the internet changed that drastically, like it changed everything. But then again, when the Twitterverse and the Facebook and the social started, that changed it all again. And we do PR in a whole different way again now, and now there's all these other different opportunities. And now the podcast world, I've noticed even, I was thinking of it just as an alternative to media or as a second, in more media when I pitched my clients to. But now that I've been booked on 140 international podcasts from last October to next April. And the more I do them, the more I realize, no, it's not just a media alternative. It's also absolutely a marketing alternative and truly a networking alternative too. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've finished a podcast and then me and the podcaster start talking and we end up working together, or somebody messages me if they heard me on, on the podcast. And so now, I've discovered that it's actually way more powerful. So every day in this new and evolving world, there are new and evolving tools which change the way we all work and the way we're expected to work. Because now you hear that thought leadership and, there's so many more opportunities to speak, no matter what your industry is, about what you're doing, that if you're not taking advantage of those, somebody in your industry is. And then are you falling behind or?
Yeah, you become kind of a dinosaur when it comes to all the technology that can help you reach people. I agree. Podcasting collapses time frames and getting to know people. That's for sure. Because the people that are listening to this, when you are interviewing somebody or having a conversation with them, they'll share things with you that would take you 5-6 coffee table conversations to get out of some people, right? So
and it's different than media, other media too. Like, I don't know, for some reason it's
definitely
more like
collapses time frames,
conversational and all that too. So you get to know someone too. Do I want to work with that person? Does that sound like someone that that makes sense to me or not? So yeah.
It's a business card. Obviously, it's
truly.
It definitely lets people understand who you are, whether they are listening or watching this. They get to know who you are. They get to, like they say, they get to know, like, and trust you. And podcasts help that time collapse really fast. But it's amazing how your journey, you got to this, your passion to, be an activist, and then develop that into PR and helping others and helping yourself. Obviously, that's great. So the next thing I'd like to ask you is, so you then segued your skills you used to help free this man into a job that elevated and celebrated the voices of others. Tell me the journey from this discovery and implementation to help others celebrate their voices. So meaning you've got to this point of helping this, how has it helped you after the fact in regards to you got any, like, tell me some other stories. Is there anything else that you can share in
Like what
regards
I've
to how
been
you,
stories, like who I've been able to help, or some of
yes,
the.
yes, to help other
Yeah,
people
I'm
celebrate their
honored, honestly.
voices?
I mean, thrilled every single day. Like every single day, I'm just thrilled with the people that come to me and continue to trust me. And I, PR spin because I'm like honestly honored. So some of the stories I've been privileged to work on is one is Rosa Parks' cousin. Rosa Parks of the Alabama bus boycott and Martin Luther King. All those days, her cousin, Professor Angela Sadler Williamson, came to me in 2016 when she had a brand new film called My Life with Rosie, about basically Rosa Parks' legacy after what we're familiar with, the next 30 years of her life, how she moved to Detroit and continued to be an activist and inspired people and all that stuff. So I actually, my name is in the credits of that film. I'm just so stunned to see that, just thanking me at the, wow, Rosa Parks, one of, again, my childhood heroes. Before I ever met Angela Sadler Williamson, I used to write, if you go back on my socials 10 years ago, thank you, Sister Rosa Parks, on the day that she died. And then all of a sudden, 2 years later, her cousin randomly is, messaging me about a project. So that one, and then I work with a little 13-year-old girl, Bolu, who sang a song called Make It Right. She never meant to be a singer or anything. She's a singer at home, but she was an honors student who her path was to get into the best school in Toronto. And then in June, in the light of all the Black Lives Matter and all the activism, all the, you know, conversation, this little girl, was just singing in her room, and she kind of came up with a song called Make It Right, which is just really heartrending and affecting, and not, nobody gets angry at it. Everybody just loves it. It's just so peaceful. And, and so she wasn't meaning to do that professionally, but she performed it at a little event that one of my other clients had, just because she was a friend, daughter of a friend. And that was so incredible. I asked her to perform it again, got it on video, put it out to global. So she was on global TV, CTV, all of them in Canada with that. She's been on Australian television with that. She's been, and we got her, we nominated her for the same award that I just won, Women of Inspiration. She actually won in the Youth Excellence category. So now there's this 13-year-old. What I'm excited about there is not about so much about this, the song, all the obvious stuff, but also there's a 13-year-old who's learning right now. The whole thing, I've been so successful my whole life at everything I've ever done is, I think, because I was empowered. I don't know why, but I learned really young that, what, if you can speak out, you don't have to be famous, you don't have to be rich, you don't have money, you can make magic, you can make things happen. And I learned that as a teenager, and I utilized that in, I guess I'm in exactly the right position now, because I utilized that to become successful in everything I've ever done. And now I feel good that now, so there's a little 13-year-old girl who, no matter what she decides to do, if she keeps on the music path, because we just introduced her to professionals and they love her and all that, she can do that, or she can just go back to that path that she was on with the getting good grades and good in the best school in Toronto. Whatever she does now, she knows from 13 years old she can make a difference, right? So I love that story, because that's when I meet adult women, or men, a lot of people who are hugely accomplished, but they never thought of themselves as being in the media. They don't use their voice, in terms of whether it's advocacy or even just speaking about their expertise in business. They see themselves as, oh, I'm just whatever. And the people that are on TV are different. So I like people to really understand there's no difference between you and the people you see on TV, or the experts you see on TV talking about, your field, but you're not there, other than the media doesn't know about you because you didn't tell them. So, what I usually do is educate people and help them frame themselves and, present them to media, because everybody has a story. And I think everybody has a good story. And I think anybody can come to me and I can find places to tell their story. And people don't realize that they have a voice and a value, and, that's not PR spin.
Yeah, you're being an advocate for others that are normally silent and don't necessarily know what process to go about to be heard, recognized, appreciated. The list goes on.
Exactly.
So that's a fantastic mission, and
What a lucky
uh,
person, like what a job, eh? Like,
yeah,
how did I luck into a job where, like, it's actually, people think of VIP parties and travel, and it actually is like that when when the world is open. But if I had ever tried to plan to get a job, where I'm going to have VIP parties and international travel and all that, probably that wouldn't have happened. I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't, it literally just happened, because I was doing something else. And then, I mean, that thank God in 2012, also I had that light bulb moment, right? Because why didn't I think of that for the 15 years before that when I was doing telesales every day? Hi, this is Tracy calling from, I don't really care, and neither do you.
Or you don't even get that part. It's just click.
So that's what I was doing because it paid the bills and I was able to do it from home at the same time as I was doing all my justice work and all that other stuff. But you know what? Like as soon as I thought, and like literally as soon as I thought, hey, wait a minute, I have skills I can monetize. Let me see how to, and then I said, wait a minute, let me see how to do that. And because we all have that tool in front of us, every single thing you can imagine is on there to figure out, to connect. That was the connecting thing too. Who can I, so there's an answer to everything. It's just literally, you've got the tools right in front of you. Again, all I had was the desktop, really crappy desktop, internet connection in a corner of a rented apartment while we were deciding what we were going to do. And I didn't now people are like, oh, it's so easy to say you're the international award. Again, wasn't the international award-winning publicist, didn't have all the contacts I have now, didn't go to school for this, didn't ask for funding, didn't have any, but just kept on working for low until I could increase my prices. But a lot of it's self-confidence because I could have increased my prices way before I realized I could too. Like my resume now is, comparable to or better than anybody. I would venture to say in PR anywhere. I'll put it up to anybody, and yet for years I was still, you'd only have to, let's say, how much is PR? Oh, and before you even said you didn't have the budget, I'd be like dropping my prices because as entrepreneurs, we're always afraid to lose that contract, right? And then I realized I could add a zero and another zero and another zero and just only take those clients if I wanted. But then I wouldn't have the entrepreneurs that I'm still educating because no one's going to hand over. Mainstream PR prices are usually, it's what I charge in Hollywood or, corporate. It's like $3,000 a month, 3 months minimum. That's how they start. But that's too much of a barrier for 90% of entrepreneurs, even those of us who are doing well, because if you just don't see it, if you've never dealt with it, you don't know what it's really going to be. It's just hard how are you going to hand over $10,000 for something that you can't really, it's until you've seen it. People that hire me at the $1,000, entrepreneur rate or even less that I give them to just kind of get their feet wet. Well, they keep on hiring me. Those are my repeat clients that don't go away. Those are my, ones that recommend me all the time because then they see the value in it. But most of us don't, you just don't know because you don't see yourself as that person who's going to be in media. So it's hard to really believe that you're going to be able to build that. Oh yeah, sure, I can get you quoted in the New York Times. Oh yeah, sure. Like getting one client in 2 weeks. This last 2 weeks, I got one client in New York Times and Reader's Digest. And that's not even doing a press release. That's just by having my finger on the pulse of incoming stuff. There's all kinds of services you can follow that reporters are on. Hey, I'm going to be doing an article on this. I need a source for this. Do you have a quote? Get the answer to them quickly. It's all about the pitch, So there's a million ways. It's just that it takes time and, so if you have all the time to figure it all out and you know what I'm talking about when I say pitch, then then it's available for you to do it yourself. You can do it. But the problem that a lot of entrepreneurs get caught up in the editorial versus advertorial, their brain thinks advertorial. That's what we're used to thinking about. Let me tell you about my product. That's not what we're doing with PR. Doing that doesn't get you the gig with PR, right? Mm-hmm. It's about you and your expertise and you're talking about the greater, and then your product is mentioned as like part of it. But unless the story is, about technology and you have a tech product, and most of the 80% of the media opportunities are about you as an expert and ideas, as opposed to, let's talk about and break down why your product is better. Or let's talk about every chapter in your book. Even a book, media is not so interested in the book as they are in the ideas, right? In the person that's holding that. It's your calling card to why you can talk about those ideas.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's definitely you've been on a journey, and throughout that process, you've done things right, probably done some things wrong, and that's what creates wisdom and makes us better at what we do. But the core of all of it and why you got good at it is because you have a passion to want to help others, which is fantastic. Kudos to you.
I gave a heck.
Yes, you did. Good job. So I know what public relations is. However, I'm intrigued to find out more about the role you have undertaken. What exactly is a public relations thought leader?
Yeah, what is a thought leader anyway, right? Like
I
I
want to know
don't
what you're.
love that
I want to
phrase.
know.
I
I
don't
want to
love
know
that
what you
phrase.
think.
I mean, now it's more and more it's the second buzzword of the year, and so I've been using it, because what do you like? People know what to me. I guess what people mean about when they say thought, I just don't really like it. It's like kind of like even power woman. I've taken that and used it because people call me that. I'm like, but I always break that down too, and I'm like, well, what does that mean anyway? Aren't we all really? So the thought leader to me, when I'm just using that because that's what everyone understands the phrase. But what I
Yeah.
think they mean, what I mean when I say it is, and when I tell people, I never say client go out and become a thought leader because that sounds kind of dumb to me. But I just more say go out and share your expertise, go out and build your. But it's the same when you say build your brand. That also sounds kind of cheesy, but that's what we're talking about: is getting out there, getting yourself known as what getting yourself in the mix, getting yourself on the stages, sharing your expertise, being the guy that they come to when they're talking about, if something in your industry. You want to be the guy in the reporter's Rolodex. You want to be the one, that they're talking. So all these things are in this new environment where we have all these platforms, like we were talking about. If we're not taking advantage of these platforms, somebody is, so there's so many opportunities to talk about what you're doing as opposed to just doing it. So I guess that's where it comes out. But I'm not a big fan of the phrase, actually, thought leader. Like, my thoughts will lead you. we joke about that
Yeah.
sometime, actually.
I hear that
But
statement
what
all the
else can
time, and I'm
what's the
curious.
alternative?
Yeah,
Where
I'm just
everybody would
curious
understand.
what
Just
people's take
expert.
is on it, right?
I usually
Because
say, like, if I'm writing a bio, I wouldn't say Dwight Heck is a thought leader. You know, I would say Dwight Heck is an internationally quoted expert on. That's how I would verbiage it, which says the same thing, right? But actually
yeah,
says something real as opposed to like, yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so I get what you're saying. So you've been a frequent guest, and you mentioned like that in earlier when we were talking on TV, radio, podcasts around the world on topics of leadership, empowerment, entrepreneurship, as well as aspects of media and public relations. Can you share a story about the best interview you've ever had and also the worst?
I don't know if there's really a worse because I don't really have any bad experiences, I don't think on that. But other than, scheduling problems, or it turned out to be a kid and, the ambitious kid, but he didn't know what he was talking about, but it was good, that's all good. But I would say the best, there's been a couple of really interesting ones. I had one the other day where like where they ask different questions. The one guy, this is what I really enjoyed was they said when they read my bio at first they were like, well, it was really counterintuitive because normally we would not have a publicist on. Our first thing, if you say we want publicists, we'd be like, yeah, no, not our vibe, because they were thinking PR spin,
Yeah.
some not genuine person, whatever. And their whole thing, their whole show is about like, it's called Make It Together, or together, something together, but it's about like doing good in the world. And
Yeah.
so I was like, and so their first thing was like, yeah. And then they read my thing, they're like, actually it's really interesting. And then they were like, wow, like a genuine public. So the whole angle with them was I'm really like breaking down what is PR and what is what is the difference between what you do and what is so, and also just more about your journey, less about the work, like this one where we're talking about the journey. Like you had a really good question. I'll remember this one because when you're saying tell us something about your childhood that led you to here too. That's a interesting question too. That's like making you, it's and bring it, and then people listening can be like, oh yeah, like I kind of see myself in that. Huh, I see how that happened. So the ones that go beyond and go a little bit deeper, and to me, the one like you, when we go beyond, and we're able to talk about the like you cared about the justice story instead of me just because I'm trying to gloss over that sometimes because I know it's a business podcast for 20 minutes and they want to hear the business stuff. So I tell not gloss over, but I tell my story thinking they're probably like, shut up with the death row stuff,
No,
And,
my
but when you,
podcast isn't even categorized as business. I did it intentionally. It's inspirational when you look at actual categories and search for it.
that's what I
Because,
prefer too. Like, cause me,
because
it was
business
funny,
can
but
be
2 weeks
encompassed in
ago,
anything.
after started to do all these podcasts, because now they're all business and entrepreneurs. So all these people who those are their buzzwords are finding me now. And so somebody messaged me on LinkedIn and I was like, oh my God, no, I swear it was funny. Anybody else would have thought it was great, but like they messaged me. The first line they said was like, oh, I see we share a passion for business. And literally this was my face reading it. Cause I'm thinking, Not really. If you said it to me 10 years ago, I've been like, ew, no, like
Yeah.
that's because my mind was in that, oh, that's, if you're in business, you're just worried about getting money. You're not, you don't care about other people. That's, the old, now I realize that's not true, that, I'm now finding ways to even thinking now that we've incorporated. I had a weird thought the other day, and then I was like, wait, that's just weird. That's not really right. But I was like, well, I could be an activist in the way of, because now I want to be a job creator. I've been thinking about that for a while. And I was thinking, well, that's pretty cool. Like cause now that I'm in a position where I can actually be a job creator, that's kind of a neat thing. That's kind of an activist role. And then I was like, wait a minute, am I saying that's because, that's the corporate guy is being cool by doing the job, then I was like, hold on, wait, what? But as you learn, now I'm in a different role and now I can do that. I'm like, oh, gee, actually, I see how I could do good in the world, by that's a different role. That could be a good thing, not necessarily a bad thing. But my first thing when you get the message going, I see you love business like me. My first thing was like,
Well, they didn't how
to?
many people don't, I get messages sent to me all the time and they'll ask questions and stuff. And I've gotten to the point now, depending on what mood I'm in, I don't answer them, because there was a few of them I'd answer the messages, whether it was a DM on Messenger or an email or whatever, Instagram, or I'd say to them, did you actually read or research me? Did you actually read my profile? Did you actually read? I've had people send me messages saying, oh, you invest and do this and this and that, and you should come and, do this and this and that. And one of the guys I responded to, and I said, do you realize I'm in the finance industry for 18 years? If you read anything
I've
about
got
me,
one like that,
and
Dwight.
if you Google my name, if you Google my name, you would know this. So, there's just people that, and they don't know how to.
Exactly. I have even worse than that. I have one on LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn, I have been huge. If I decide to go and prospect on LinkedIn, which I never do because I'm too busy, right? But if I decide to go and do that, and I message 10 people on LinkedIn, I promise you by the end of the week, 3 of them are going to be my clients, right? No question. Because I'm going to, why? Because I'll do it right. I'll find people doing things, that are appropriate. It'll be well targeted. It'll be a good conversation in the way I reach out. But there are people, oh my God, this one person, I felt somebody messages me and they're like, I don't remember even the original phrase, but I got the impression they wanted to talk about PR. It was on LinkedIn. So they're booking a time to talk to me. And then they come back in, they're like, oh, want to make sure we're still talking. And then I was like, yeah. And then I just reread the message they sent me. Something with the way I'm like, wait a minute. You have a PR project, you want to talk to me about PR, like you have a project you want to promote, right? Just to make sure I'm understanding. And she's like, no, I'm a publicist. I'm like, it's like, oh no, she's a junior publicist. Like, I'm like, okay, so hold on. Do you know that I'm not only a publicist, but I'm like an international, I don't expect you to know my bio, but you don't even know that I'm a publicist. And if you go to my LinkedIn and you're on LinkedIn, like you are on LinkedIn, but you haven't clicked on my profile. You've just messaged. You're generic. So I got this message thinking it probably said you want to talk about PR. And I thought they would want to talk about PR, So
Yeah.
I'm like, sure, right? What do you want to know? And then I said, wait a minute. And then the girl said, oh, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. It was my assistant, doing marketing for me. And I'm like, well, no, that's not. There's nothing wrong with your assistant. You obviously didn't direct her properly. You probably just told her to go and, it's not her fault. But clearly, no, that's the worst thing possible. Maybe you'll get someone in there, but like, you're going to be annoying 99 people. You're going to be like, you're not even, if I'm going to do it on LinkedIn, I will go over there. I'll see Dwight Heck. Oh, Dwight has a podcast. Dwight's from, wherever he's from, Calgary. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to look in Edmonton, sorry. And then I'm going to be like, hey, Dwight, so I see you working on a podcast. Yeah, I do a lot of work with podcasters. It's at least going to be friggin'
You're going to put some effort in. You're going to put some effort in. And that's the problem with so many people, though. Like, how can you click and send me a message on, most people are clicking Messenger. They're doing it through Facebook or Instagram now because they're tied together, or, LinkedIn. In order to send me a message, you had to have seen my giant cover picture that shows, you know what I mean? Shows the fact I'm in finance. If they even read a few of the lines of my about, they wouldn't even bother reaching out to me. And if I get, and for those that are listening to this, that this offends, I'm sorry, but if I get one more message about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and come invest money with us, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose it because read my thing. I'm into finance. I
Yeah,
would
I
not,
know,
I'm not the
exactly.
person that I'm going to, why are you reaching out to me?
Yeah, you're just gonna go, oh, okay, random Instagram poster.
Yeah.
It gets me too. Like I'll post
Here's all
something that
my
I have the
money.
word.
Here's all my money. Buy me a
Like
Bitcoin.
I'll have something.
Buy me one
That's so funny.
Bitcoin. They're
Yeah.
$30,000. Buy me one Bitcoin. Whatever they were the other
Like
day.
I'll
They're
find
30.
same thing. I'll be on Instagram posting. I guess they have buzzwords or whatever, and I'll
Yeah.
be posting a hashtag success or something. Then all of a sudden, within 30 seconds, someone posting under it, "Oh, I had so much success. Thanks so much to Bob Smith, who got me $9 million in Bitcoin." And I'm always like, why? Like, you really think someone's gonna post and go, "Oh, hey, Ralph Kahn, please tell me how Sam made you $8." They must though. Somebody must be doing it, or they wouldn't. They must, like those Nigerian scams or whatever. Too. They
Oh
must have.
yeah, the ones that
Somebody
used to
must
come on
answer.
used to come in the emails in the late '90s. We used to get all those. Yeah, but anyway, we we could go on and on about how people need to put some effort in if you're going to reach out to somebody,
Target.
because
Yeah.
all you do is lose credibility because they will tell others, right? So especially if you're somebody that's on social media, you can easily tarnish your personal image very quickly. So put some effort in.
And actually, that's a great lesson too in the media, story. In the same way that you got to do your research and be careful before you reach out and just send your blind message. Same thing when you reach out to media with your messaging. Make sure you're targeting a reporter who writes about those kind of things. In fact, for best results, go find out who might have written about things like that, or where do I fit in? Would it be a news story? Is just like hard news, or is this more the kind of news that would be in the front section, but maybe in the 12 or 13? So it's a general news story, but not like it's not going to be in your 20-second 20-minute news broadcast. It might be, so know who to pitch to, know who, all that stuff is important too.
Yeah, of course. And there's so many people that just don't put in the effort, right? They just hire people blindly too. I see that all the time without interviewing people to find out whether or not they, or ask other people. I always tell people, like coach people, what you do, because I've had some people here recently that were taken advantage of. And I said to them, it was actually one of the podcasts that'll go live here in the next few weeks. And I said to them, I said, did you go and talk to somebody in that group? Well, why would I do that? They're part of that group. Well, I said the group doesn't invoke trust in that person. That just because they're part of that group doesn't mean they're a trustworthy person. So what you do is you go to somebody that you see hang around that person and go up to them privately, obviously, and say, "Hey, I see you're friends with Sally or John. What kind of a person are they?" And you don't listen to what they say. You look at their body language and you look at their tonality. All of a sudden their shoulders go up, their tone changes,
true.
their
Yeah,
pitch.
good point.
So they may not want to throw that person under a bus.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting.
we need to get to be people of, students of human nature. And human nature means that people will lie through their words, but their body language, their tonality tells all. All right, their pitch changes, or their body gets tense, or their eyes dart around.
Like that. I remember, now that you mentioned that was something I was interested in learning more about that I kind of forgot, because I remember reading something, I don't even remember now, but there's something about if you go like this or you go like that, like there's something about when you're remembering, there's people look either, and I can't even remember which end, I should know, but if they look up in one direction, and I don't know if it's all the time, but there's something where like, if they're trying to judge if someone's lying or whatever, if you look in one direction, it's like a memory thing, and in the other direction they're saying, I can't remember reading something.
Yeah,
something that people...
there is articles out about there, but there's also, for every study that's done, that's another
there's
thing.
Also going to be an exception.
There's always something that debunks it. They say if you look to the one direction, I can't remember what it is. Like you said, it's a thought process. The other one, they say it's lying, but then there's other research stuff that's proven debunked it. So bottom line, I stopped utilizing the eyes more. So I listen. I listen to their tone and I watch their body, because when people are relaxed, so if they like John or Sally, their eyebrows go up a little bit.
Oh yeah, he's great. Yeah, that makes sense.
And their shoulders are not up. They're relaxed. Their chest might pump out a little bit because they now get to be that person that's sharing information about the person you're asking, and maybe they get to be that person's advocate. And you'll notice that in their tone and their body language. And on the reverse side, you can tell And that gives you a good indicator. And then you could go, let's say it's a group of 10 people. Maybe it's a day or 2 days later. You could go and ask somebody else, hey, what about John or Sally? I'm just curious. I'm thinking of working with them. And, I just wanted to know, what's your thought process about them? Well, some people are, they're wired that they're going to lie for that person. It's a fact of life, right? Maybe they've been friends with them for a long time and they want to protect them and don't want the committee of or society to know the truth about them. So I asked more than I've been doing this now for a while. And you know what? The first one is usually enough for me. I don't need to talk to somebody else, because you can tell. You can really tell. So then I'll go back to that person I was asking that other person about, and I'll start asking, questions that are leading questions that are going to force them to play their hand, right? They're going to end up not being able to bluff, because I've been taken advantage of too long by the word of human beings. And the word is a powerful tool. And we need to learn that word can be powerful in a growth and a destruction phase too, right? So anyway, we digress. Great conversation.
No, true. Good conversation though. Yeah, exactly.
So
See, that's how these things go. That's why podcasts are different than, mainstream TV or something.
It should be a conversation. And if you're not making me smile once in a while, or grimace once in a while, or vice versa, it ain't a very good podcast, right? You got to be able to. Life is life, right? So I appreciate what you've shared so far. So you're an author of an upcoming book called Get Repped: Build Your Brand with Effective Public and Media Relations. Can you share more exactly about what this book is about and how it can help those working on their personal brand?
Yeah, so it's about the kind of things we've been talking about. Before I started doing podcasts, my client, Lou Bayer, who is she was one of my clients when I was a freelancer, actually, and she had a book called The 30% Solution, a business-focused kind of CSR book. And we managed to she hired me from Elance, was one of my freelance days, and we managed to make that a business bestseller on, like Amazon bestseller in its category. After that, she decided that, ultimately for her next book, she wanted to go a different way and become a publishing company, basically, and then offer other people to publish to her. Anyway, so now she's a publishing company. She got 30 or 40 books under her belt, mostly in business and soft skills, like business kind of soft skills. And then she literally asked me to write the book on PR because I, helped her book become successful. So she knew I knew what I was doing. And she's like, I think PR would be a good, fit into our business library. So would you write the book? And I always wanted to be a writer, like I said, from a little girl, though I thought I was going to be writing fiction. So I still have to write my fiction. But, but basically I'm using it to educate people on the same kind of things I talk about on these podcasts before I thought about going on the podcast, which is speaking to business audiences, entrepreneur audience, primarily about the idea is, people always think of PR for celebrities and sports stars and all that, but explaining how it's actually relevant, if not more relevant, these times for the entrepreneur, the business person, or really anybody that that wants to get a message out there. But it's primarily focused on on a business audience, educating them that this is for you too.
Yeah, that's great. So when do you expect this book to come out?
I'm saying summer now. We were hoping for spring. They're just waiting on me. It's got the ISBN number. It's got the cover. It's got all that stuff. They had a few things I was revising, and then a few other things I thought, oh, I need to put a chapter in on, the other side of media, like what happens when you get in the wrong side of media, like some bad stories about dealing with media, and also just adding stuff. So they're just waiting on me to stop doing all the PRing and start writing about the PRing. I'm really trying to do it like, an hour or two every couple of days, and then I'll get it done soon. So yeah, summer, hopefully summer.
That's interesting. You helped your friend though. I have a friend of mine that's helped people publish. He's around 235 books now. So, and about 95% of them are all bestsellers. So
there you go. So yeah. That's why she's doing this.
There's not enough people out there doing it. And then the sad thing is I tell people, because my book comes out in a couple weeks, and I have people tell me, well, why would you want to write a book? I said, because I don't want the music to die inside of me. And they'll look at me strange and they'll go, what do you mean you don't want the music to die inside of you? I said, I have all these years of mistakes that I've made
Exactly, right?
pivoted them
Yeah.
to life lessons, and then flipped that life lesson into wisdom that if I don't share it,
And it's all
right,
just
it's going
sitting
to
in
die
there,
inside
not,
of me.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I just use music as that phrase that we've heard a lot of our lives, right? Music dies inside of us. So I don't want the music. I don't want the dance. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I don't want what I've gone through and the trials and tribulations,
To be for nothing. Yeah.
but from my business journey to being a single dad of 5 kids and raising them on my own for many, many years. It was just, we all have a story, like you said. You did say that, right? When I agree 100%. And what the
Yeah.
best way to sell our story, or not necessarily sell it, present our story, and then sell it as that we're somebody that's got some knowledge that can help others. A book is a giant business card. Giant business card, right? Just like podcasting, it all ties
Absolutely.
together,
No,
right?
I encourage my clients. I say, if you haven't got a book, but they're like professionals who have all this content and all this stuff and blogs. I'm like, why don't you have a book? Like, start thinking about it. I know it's intimidating. Like, I've been a writer my whole life, and and the book process kind of intimidated me at first too. Not a fiction. If you gave me, carte blanche to write fiction, I'd be fine. But the nonfiction, I'm still kind of trying to get my head around what do I talk about when, and a table of contents and splitting it all up. For some reason, that part drags me down, the structure of it.
Yeah, so
Because it's
that's why
nonfiction.
I like dealing with with my friend Mike, because they basically, 230 books later, they got the process down pat, right? They're not just throwing, and he's written 15 books himself. He just published his 15th book is publishing right away here, but he basically stepped through all of it, because I've always wanted to write a book, but if I had to rely on my own vices to get it done, I'm too much of a perfectionist, and I would have gotten stalled too many times throughout the process, and it would never be at that point where it's going to be live here in a couple weeks, right? So I can totally appreciate what you're saying. Sounds like you're a bit of a perfectionist yourself. Otherwise, you'd probably be farther along. And we get caught on our own. We get caught up in our own, perfectionism, or we get caught up in the fact that, what if we have self-limiting beliefs too? A lot of people that want to write books have self-limiting beliefs because they don't believe it. Well, why would anybody want to read this? Why would anybody want to listen to it? Maybe it's an Audible book. Maybe they're going to listen to it. Why would anybody want to do this? Well, you know what? I look at it this way in life, whether you're going to do a book, a podcast, or whatever, if you can change one person's life, you've made it, right? You've fulfilled your destiny of wanting to serve and help others. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you help society? Sometimes it only can be done at one person at a time. A book still is one person at a time, though society has more reach to you because of a book or a podcast. It's still one person, right? One entity reading it, one person listening to it. So I appreciate you telling me a little bit more about that. So have you had many critics on your journey to be your own entrepreneur? And if so, how did you deal with them?
Critics?
Yeah. Have you had any critics on your journey, and how did you deal with them?
Not so much, and I think that's because it wasn't like I wasn't looking for funding. I didn't have to go outside and convince people to buy into my vision.
Yeah.
It was just me sitting there quietly at my desk, switching things over, saying, "No, I'm going to do this now." And then by the time I kind of quietly got some successes, and by the time people started noticing, it was like, whoa, wait a minute, what's Tracy doing over there? And I'm already getting more and more. So it really comes down to I'm just driven. I'm just like, I'm like, if someone, what though, like if people don't believe in me, that does drive me. Like, somebody says something now, if you said to me like a year ago, oh, Tracy, yeah, she can't do that. Or if I overheard you saying, I don't think Tracy could do that, I'll be thinking that all year. I mean, no angry or anything, but all year I'll be thinking about what that person is going to think. And in the back of my mind, I post this on Instagram, posting that on Instagram. And I'm like, did that one freak you out yet? Did you Did you think I'm successful? Did you think I made it? Did that one freak you out yet? You know what I mean? It's kind of fun because, like, my last year has been insane. Like from the women of inspiration to the blah 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 to like 140 podcasts from Dubai to Toronto to whatever. Like literally everything I thought about doing, I've just thought, let's do that, and I'll do it. And like it's not because I'm magical or any different. Like I said, I'm driven. I
You're
believe in
tenacious.
myself.
I
And
keep
I
on
know
thinking
that,
of the word tenacious. You're
right,
tenacious.
tenacious. And I know that every one little thing I can get,
Yeah.
because I know how it works. I get the one. So once I got that Women of Inspiration, once I won that award, I'm like, all right, now I'm going to start doing the podcast. Before that, I wasn't even really trying. I was just doing, but once I have that, there's something I can say. It's like that third party credibility that we talk about, right? Before that, I had the list of all my media successes. And then I had the list of, me being quoted here and there, but I'm mostly focused on my clients. So I'm not really worried about building that up. But once I got that, I'm like, oh, that's just too good an inroad. I mean, like now I'm called a Woman of Inspiration and an award. So right there, you got the inspirational, so tell us how you did it, Tracy. And then I think about it and I do have an inspirational story. Hello, so I started thinking, I'll start talking about that. And then everyone proving what I say to clients every single day, every single thing builds on every other thing, builds on every other thing to the point where now, when you have, hey, when I was setting my first pitches out, hey, do you want to have me on your podcast? I'm a publicist. I can talk about I work across all industries. Well, and now it's like, plus I'm an international award winning. Here's the award. And here's the last 10 podcasts I've been on where you can listen to and hear how great a segment was. So now nobody says like, I almost don't pitch podcasts anymore because they all want me on it. You know what I mean? Unless I really like the name of the show, like Give a Heck. Or, like something like I don't need them, but I do it because I enjoy it. And I'm making, like I said, I'm realizing it's not just the media alternative. It's also a networking alternative. And also it's good for my clients because even if I'm the one on this one, now after this, I know what kind of show you have. I know, which of my clients are going to be appropriate for it. And I'm going to pitch you one or two and you're going to have one or two. So I found a new avenue for some of my clients. You may recommend me later. So it's really just like, there are so many opportunities. So people not thinking thinking the doors have closed in 2020 and we're all in lockdown and all this. There really are a lot of opportunities too, because now things like, forget podcasts for a minute. What about if you want to speak on a panel, an international panel? Well, now you can go and do that. You're a supermarket guy. You could be speaking on the International Symposium of Supermarkets in Tokyo, Japan, and they don't have to, or whatever, they don't have to fly you there. They don't have to put you up in a hotel. So the bar is a lot lower. Obviously, they still want excellent content, so it's still prestigious, but the bar is a lot lower in terms of who can get those speaking engagements because you don't have to get 2 weeks off work. You don't have to go there, so look for those opportunities.
Exactly. The thing is, though, we're never going to go back to what people say is, oh, I can't wait till things get back to normal. Guess what? There's going to be companies and there's going to be many opportunities for people to go and speak or attend things, and they're not going to have it where you fly in anymore. Yes, in-person events or in-person connection is very important, but there's going to be a lot of people that realize that they can still add value to their staff, right? Their company or their followers just by doing it through virtual, like Zoom, like this. And too many people don't understand that. And when they come out at the end of the pandemic, they're still going to be the same place, or many people worse off, because they want that normal back. And they're not, because people really mankind, womankind, humans, we're designed to pivot and grow and change and evolve. But unfortunately, because of the poor media, social media or television, people associate with the wrong types of things. They stop emotionally and mentally growing. They get into a camp mode of go to work, go home, get paid. And like I teach people, they're on the hamster wheel, right? They're stuck on that hamster wheel and they just don't know how to get off. And they're living a life. They're literally they're walking dead. They're going back and forth in the same patterns, and they're just waiting for that day that they die. They don't have a purpose or a passion like you do and so many other people do. And unfortunately, they'll still be that way at the end of the pandemic. And then the next big thing that happens, they're going to have another thing to be pissed off and angry about. And it'll just keep on going. They don't know how to feed off the good things of life. So they feed off all the negative. And they're the
Yeah.
people that are keyboard warriors criticizing you and I, or saying stupid ass shit out of their actual mouth. And
Yeah.
right. We're just looking for our tribe. We're looking for people, like you said, that'll support us and recommend us and refer us. So I appreciate you sharing that. So, Tracy, what would you say in your life are some things that you wish you had done better on the road to where you're currently at?
Things I wish I'd done better.
Yes.
I wish I had that aha moment a lot earlier. And because I mean, I spent a whole lot of time just in terms of professional hours of the day in my life doing stuff that I can't even barely remember now, just selling crap that I didn't care about it. I mean, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with it. Like ISO 9000 definitely needed those standards, but that wasn't my passion. Didn't care, but I was a person sitting at her desk. I wish I thought, listen to all those people that say all these things that sound like cliches a lot earlier and realize that no, like, I wish I had no, I've really been empowered. As much as I say I was empowered to have a voice, but I was never empowered financially because I didn't grow up with people who knew how to build a business. I was never poor. I was like middle class growing up, but people that my parents worked for other people. Everyone I knew I didn't know how to build a business. I didn't know how to, so even, I knew how to become a freelancer, but then it took me a while even to, someone said, oh, you got to go and register, be a general partnership. Okay. And then it took me a couple of years before my business consultant started saying, no, like, hello, you're like, you see what you do, you see what, like, you need to scale up. You need to, so like, to really that business component like that, it's that, being empowered, that I wish we learned that stuff in school, you do, I guess, in university, but like from young, like this is what it is. Because we learn to be workers. We learn from very young. What do you want to be when you grow up? And they never tell us really how to be an entrepreneur. At least maybe that's never really a thing. It's like, you're really trained to think about what job you're going to go into, how you're going to write that resume, and where you're going to fit. Right? Because I was never taught, like, no, really. And I'm 51 years old, and I've only recently, like, I'm still getting my head around it now, like, wow. And why didn't somebody tell me I'm so good at what I do? I'm so brilliant at what I do. I'm so skilled at what I do. What I wish somebody 20 years ago would come and said to me, you are like super crazy business. Let me give you like, $5,000, because I started my business with nothing. If I started my business with $5,000, it would be I'd be a billionaire business right now. Because I literally didn't have even a little bit of capital, and now I'm getting money. It's like, woo, money's coming in. Like, all right, this is cool. And I didn't know it was that easy. And I'm almost feeling like, I know I'm not saying $1 million yet because I'm still worried about my pricing. I'm still pricing low for some, but now it's like easy, and to the point where I'm suddenly thinking, I didn't realize, and this is in the age of COVID when money is difficult to come by, right? But I'm suddenly realizing, wow, there's money out there. There's a lot of money out there. It's just a matter of figuring out how to get it and how to get it to come to you, and now it's kind of the thing I already love, but it took that long because I didn't know how to develop that. I knew how to develop the front part, but I didn't know how to develop that part,
So, Tracy, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Well, you said there, never giving up. So we were talking about Jimmy Dennis, so let's refer back to him. Never, never give up. That's what he said. That, and when a man who spent 25 years on death row, so that's not just locked up in a cage, but locked up in a cage with them telling you nobody cares and we're going to kill you on this day and this day, tells you never, never, never give up when the whole world is saying you're not going to win and there's doors this big between you and freedom and 10 of them. Never, never give up. You can get through that. If he can get through that, I think we can get through all this that we're all dealing with. And I think I mentioned it earlier, my other favorite saying is, I don't know who originally said it, but I found it online this year, which is, if, we didn't get this far to only get this far. And I always say that when in podcasts, because no matter whether, where we are this far is somewhere you're happy to be, or whether it's, you just got up, and you got through all that crap that you got to get here, and it's hard, and you just want to roll over and not get up or whatever. You didn't get this far. You didn't get through all that stuff, whatever you got through to get, to fall today, to die today, to jump off a cliff today, or to give it all up. You didn't, you got this far for a reason. and you got to keep on going because there's more on the other side. So never give up. And we didn't get this far to only get this far. There's more ahead. And, if you're not, and you got to be here to see it. So.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate the message. So our time is almost up. I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we can end, could you please tell the listeners what is the best way to reach you?
To reach me, I live on the Facebook, so they can reach me at Tracy Lamourie there, or on Instagram, Tracy Lamourie PR Media. On the website, lamoriemedia.com, the old technology, the phone, 289-788-5881, or lamoriepr@gmail.com. So as long as you have the spelling of my name right down there.
Yeah, I'll make sure it's in the show. I'll make sure it's in the show notes too, that the listeners can access at my website at giveaheck.com. The show notes are there for.
And I do work internationally. So if anybody is interested, from the business side of continuing the conversation, even just in a consult to see okay, so I hear what you're saying, but I don't really believe, it could be me. And you want to talk about how I can, get you butcher, baker, candlestick maker, person who cleans toilets at the mall. It doesn't matter. You have something to say, I can get you out there. So
that's awesome. I appreciate you. Thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Tracy. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn. It is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.